Hi everybody, I'm doing another reaction video. This was actually requested by somebody. Cora Gray says, okay, but hey, I have another topic for you. Can you react to Why Aren't Asian Men Sexy by BuzzFeed? So that's the video I'm going to do today. So this is Why Aren't Asian Men Sexy by BuzzFeed. And this was posted on May 26, 2017 by BuzzFeed Video. The thing I have a problem with is that BuzzFeed has a reputation for posting really clickbait stuff. So even though the title says Why Aren't Asian Men Sexy, I highly doubt it's actually going to go into Why Aren't Asian Men Sexy. It's going to be something else and it's going to be clickbaity. But yeah, that's my guess. But let's get into it and see what's in this video.
Gentlemen, welcome. We are here today to talk about why the fuck aren't Asian men considered sexy?
There's only 4 left and that's all.
I'm just setting the tone for this conversation.
Thank you.
The idea that Asian men in American media are emasculated and seen as somehow less than other racial counterparts is something that's been historically sort of plaguing a lot of the different projects that we've all probably worked on in the past. Why do you think Asian men aren't considered sexy?
Okay, I knew it. There's a difference between how people choose to portray Asian men in like movies and shows and things like that, and why aren't Asian men considered sexy in real life. Those are two different things, right? How they are presented in the media and movies and films and stuff like that, and how they're treated in terms of sexiness in real life. Those are two different things in my opinion.
It's the result of effectively a historical campaign. I mean, you know, Asian immigrants first started coming to this country. Everything from political cartoons, obviously government policy, was all about kind of framing Asians as almost bestial vermin. And, you know, women were kind of pushed in one direction as sort of over-sexualized, exotic. And men, meanwhile, were pushed into this corner of neutered eunuchs, you know, with tiny bodies and
Barbaric tendencies.
Tiny bodies.
It's like the opposite of what was purported as like the Western ideal of gender norms, right?
Asian characters.
Now, if you look up historically, the reason why it's been a long time, a long history of Asian men being portrayed in a certain way in terms of these ads and old cartoons and stuff like that, that's actually because Asian men are sexy. How ironic, right? The reason why people felt the need to portray Asian men as really unsexy is because in real life, dude, a lot of people were actually considering Asian men sexy. If you look up yellow peril, I read it in my history class. I think one of the classes I took in college, I learned that a lot of white women, a lot of Western women, were actually considering a lot of Asian men sexy. And in order to combat that, people had to put out like cartoons and old stuff like that to try to portray Asian men as unsexy in order to contradict how they were being portrayed, how they were being seen in real life. Because in real life, there were women who considered Asian men sexy, and I guess a lot of white men felt insecure about that, so that's why they felt the need to portray Asian men in that way. But that, yeah, like I said, BuzzFeed, they're so clickbaity, dude. Like, the title says Why Aren't Asian Men Sexy, right? But they're talking about why aren't Asian men portrayed as sexy in the media and things like that. Not why aren't Asian men considered sexy in real life, because those are two different things.
We never think of them as anything but, at best, up until like maybe I think in the last 5-10 years, the friend.
I mean, it's interesting though, even like the masculinized roles, like the, you know, say martial artists and so on and so forth, they're still kind of not getting any. You know, it's like...
No, Jet Li didn't even get to kiss Ali at the end of Romeo Must Die.
They had a good long handshake.
Again, they're talking only about movies and shows and things like that. They still haven't talked about real life. They're only talking about the media.
And
Because Asian men have sex by really prolonged handshakes. There's a really interesting valley we're discussing where the two peaks for Asian male attractiveness these days is like really strong virile masculinity or really specifically designed femininity. But this valley of what we might call, in a layman's way, the average Asian American male is never really spoken to. And what's interesting is I feel like the average male in other cultures, specifically, let's say with white American culture, is constantly spoken to. Like the idea of being an average Joe is literally almost a badge of honor.
you even
Okay, hold up. This video is supposed to be about sexiness. Yes, average-looking white dudes get casted for roles. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're seen as sexy.
see more diversity of size and shape and so forth among African American and Hispanic actors, at least in comedies, right? If you are an Asian lead, you almost have to be super hot.
Which when that trickles down, what does it say for the young Asian American male who's considered more average looking? It automatically makes you subpar to the national average outside.
Listen, I agree with the argument they're making here in that white people, even if you're average looking, you have a better chance of getting casted into shows and movies and things like that when compared to Asian men, right? I agree with that. However, that's not that's not the video. The video is called "Why Aren't Asian Men Sexy?" But they're not getting into that at all. They're talking specifically about getting casted into roles in movies and shows and things like that. It's classic BuzzFeed. They give you one thing, but then they talk about another thing. It's so dumb.
Side of your race.
Like, people talk about K-pop as if it's going to save the world, right? Like, Asian idols from Asia are going to make it all good for the rest of us. And the fact is, as much as I appreciate that it's kind of cool that it's being imported here, it's, again, one of those things which doesn't quite solve it for just everyday Asian guys in the middle of America.
India doing well.
Okay, hold up. Again, the title is "Why Aren't Asian Men Sexy?" And this guy's talking about, oh, well, you know, perhaps Asian men are sexy, but Asian American men aren't sexy. So again, to be more clear, they would have to say, why aren't Asian American men sexy? If people on this panel don't agree that, you know, they think that Asian men in Asia are sexy, but Asian men in America aren't considered sexy. This video is just all over the place. Jesus Christ.
Well, and like all these macho Abhishek Bachchans and John Abraham, who are like the Tom Cruises and Brad Pitts of India, it still has nothing to do with my life.
Yes, we have unicorns, you know what I mean? It's like they're genetically gifted people of every ethnicity.
Sure.
There's no question about that. But it doesn't adjust the larger reality that we live in a culture in which the basic standards, you know, not the ones that we can aspire to, not the ones that if we, you know, gym ratted all of our lives and we're born with the right parents and all that stuff, whatever, like the basic standards of what an Asian guy looks like probably falls short in different ways.
You never ever get to see these images in media of like an Asian guy you grew up.
Again, images and media. They keep on bringing up images and media. I get it, okay? I get what they're saying, and I agree with this, but we're not talking about real life here, and that's what's disappointing. Like, we're halfway through the video, and they still haven't gone to how Asian men aren't considered sexy in real life. It's all media.
Up with, or your brother or your father.
With media in this country, because it has been predominantly white, and I get like, you know, I'm sure like some people are like, stop talking about not being white. But when you're not the majority in it, you have to have that visibility just so you can show people like, it's not the only option. If you like that, great, but like, it can't be the only thing you see.
If I tell you, and I'm at a party, I'm like, oh, I want you, my girlfriend to meet my friend. He's a white guy. What does he look like? Oh, he's, you know, brunette, and he's like a little husky, but he's really funny. And they'll be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll meet him, whatever. And then I'm like, oh, you want to meet my, here's my Chinese friend. He's coming. He's, you know, he's kind of, you know, he's like black haired and a little husky. They'd be like, I'm gonna go to a bar.
See, finally, he gets to a real life example, which I appreciate.
That is so funny.
It's so true.
Very true.
Everyone
But why?
has gotten
But
that.
that's-
Because people might say, well, here's the old argument of it's a preference. It's not like racism.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole thing is it comes down to if you walk into any situation and just because someone's of a certain ethnicity, you have a lower opinion of them, that starts spreading in its own way to things that actually have, like, I think, a lot of dire consequences.
Every time I
Yeah, and that is a thing. I'm not gay myself, but some gay people, I've heard them talk about how on Grindr there's a trend of no Asians allowed, like they're not looking for Asian guys. So I guess it is a thing in the gay community.
I hear the term preference brought up in any kind of conversation, it always feels like it's a danger signal that somebody's about to like say stuff that's bullshit. And that's because the assumption is that there's some sort of level playing field, right? So in, say, casting movies, it's like, oh, well, we're casting for talent. We're not really looking for people of a certain color or height or shape or whatever. But then why are you always picking the 6-foot-tall white guys,
The first, like,
Again, they're talking about casting for movies and roles and things like that. And we're almost
silent
through
films of
this
Hollywood,
video.
you have Anime Wong and
Setsu Hayakawa?
Setsu Hayakawa, who was like the first real like Japanese Asian male idol, was lusted over by American women. But then there's so much that comes into the propaganda of politics and media that shifted public perception of men. Because at some point, right, he couldn't get work anymore in Hollywood films and had to go to Europe.
There's also
This is exactly what I'm talking about, right? He's giving an example of an Asian man who actually was lusted over in real life. However, there was so much propaganda, trying to portray Asian men and all these cartoons and stuff like that, trying to portray Asian men as unsexy, that eventually that led to him not being able to find work anymore.
So pre-World War II, when then we were worried about everyone was Japanese and plotting against us.
And then the Korean War, and then the Vietnamese War, and everything was like this. This is not that long ago, though. That's the thing people forget. This is what our parents went through.
The reality is this: we are going to live, hopefully, in a world which is going to continually get closer together, and in a country which is going to get more and more diverse. There are enough of us all different that if we just learn from one another, whether online or off, things will get better on their own. And maybe whether or not we as Asian men get dates is not a very big piece of what justice looks
huge.
like. Well,
So huge.
but what it is it's part of a much larger set of changes.
Right.
And for that, I'm proud that we're at least just having this conversation.
What I really encourage, especially a lot of viewers out there, is to not be as reactive like everyone is, but be more responsive. Like if you see something where you want to see more Asian American men in media, sometimes it's not just the actors. You have to find out who the executive producers are on a project. You have to find out who's the writer. Like there's so many different things at play that shape the idea of what's being told to young people in entertainment, in politics, and media, that you can't just center on the image of someone.
Yeah, it's not going to be a whole writer's room of white men working on a BET show. They can obviously lend themselves to the experience, but it can't be everyone. It can't be all.
We are given an opportunity now just as Asian men in Western media to say we can be hot. Any one of us can feel and express ourselves in a sexual way, and it's not weird and it's not a gimmick, it's just who we are.
Listen, I agree with the arguments that they're making, right, about Asian men in media and it being a tough time to get casted and things like that. But BuzzFeed they need to frame things better and title things better. The damn video is titled, "Why Aren't Asian Men Sexy?" They don't exactly get into that topic. They get into propaganda and all, and how things are portrayed and things like that, and getting casted into roles. Like, I understand media can shape people's perception of things, and like I said, I agree with the argument that they're making. However, BuzzFeed needs to be less clickbaity and actually present the argument as it is, instead of but then again, I see the necessary evil part of it, right? Because if you do just present it as the argument that it's supposed to be, and it's not clickbaity, well then not many people are going to click on the video, right? Clickbait is clickbait for a reason, because they want to bait you into watching this video even though it turns out that they're presenting a different argument than what the title actually says. Whatever. I get it. It's a necessary evil, right? The fact that it's clickbait is a necessary evil in order to get a lot of people to watch this thing. How many views does this have? 2.8 million views. Okay, I get it. I get the purpose of making it clickbait, all right? To get people to watch it. So I guess that's better than nothing. I agree with what's said in the video. And yeah, there's some places in the United States where there's not a lot of Asian people. There's just not a large Asian population. And the only thing that they have to go off of is, well, what they see in media. So of course, it is important how Asian men are portrayed, because that's the only, like, for some people, that's the only way they're gonna see Asian people is on movies and shows and things like that. They're not gonna see them in real life because there simply isn't a large Asian population around where they live. So yeah, I can see why it is important to, portray Asian men in a way that says, hey, Asian men can be sexy, and not just portray them as some weird foreign kung fu people. And, it is important to show that Asian men can also be sexy in the media. All right. Yeah, like I said, my criticism of the video is that it's just so clickbaity. It's Jesus Christ. It's like clickbaity to the point where it makes me cringe, right? But I appreciate the argument that they are making in the video about how Asian men are portrayed in media. All right, that's it for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time. And if you guys have any more suggestions for reactions you guys want to see, just leave it in the comments. All right, thank you. See you guys next time. Bye.